Okay, I'm just using my dial indicator as usual to get this spot on. This has got to be really accurate. And then here's my cutter to open out this just to the inside of that boss. Alright, so each of these have now been bored out. I did these ones with extraordinary care because I had to hold them in the teeth of the chuck and I don't want to damage the gears. But I bored them all out to approximately the same size. I'm not too worried because I'm going to make the journals fit each of them individually. It's the only way I can do that. There'll be a couple of thou difference between these. But that's nice and flat. I can get that with the flange to push up against there very nicely. It's got a bit of extra meat around there. And on this one, the same again, but I'm going to push a flange right up into that nice little flat bit and we'll glue it all in. That'll be alright. Alright, couldn't do this without drawing it out properly, so I've actually drawn it to scale here, 10mm to 1. So this is the perspex, the green, that sits inside the cylinder that's glued in. I'm going to drill that out to 12mm. This here, that you can't really see this, is the white plastic that's forming part of the gearbox. That's 10mm across, and then this is the brass that's screwed onto the other end. So the plan is, I'm going to make this insert in the middle. I'm going to make it 9mm across, and then as I make it, I'm going to put a very important journal here, which is around about 10, but it's going to be designed to be about a 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch interference fit with the gear. And then this is just a flange that sits behind that it's going to push up against, and that's going to be the full thickness of the brass that I'm going to use, which is 16mm. This continues out this end. Then we put a 5.5mm hole through the whole thing, drill it out to 6 on either side, but the center part will have a thread in it. The whole thing can protrude a bit on this end and on that end, but I reckon 20mm is about right, because that's what it comes out to, and that's what we're going to make. So I'm going to make this. Now the question is, how does it fit? It's going to have a bush that sits in here, and this is what the bush is going to look like. It's on the outside, it's going to be a nice sliding fit with the perspex there, and it's going to fit right inside this component, this part here. This part is what's going to mate up against the gear and form the bearing component. It's going to be made of plastic. Once again, drill the middle out to 9. The whole size of the thing will be 7.5. I'll have to make 2 of those for the 2 gearboxes that fit in that way. And then I'll have to make the same in reverse, but I haven't worked out the sizes yet. And that'll take a bit of playing to get it to the point where there's just no play, and it's just nicely turning in its slot. Once I've got that, then we can start thinking about the next part. Now, what I might do right now though is take the plastic of the gearbox and machine out what I need to machine in here so that the gear's going to fit, and then I might screw them together and put the hole right through, which, as you know, is now 12mm, and we go from there. So here I am, I'm working on that second journal here. I've had a couple of cuts at it. I've got it right, and now just tapping that through. I started the tapping in the lathe, just finishing it off in the vise. Turned it around, and I'm getting the other side done. Now this is using super glue, and this is just some hardener. I'll put this on the screen what I'm actually using, because I just wanted to make sure that this super glue works as well as it possibly could, bearing in mind that this is around about a 2 thou interference fit. And on the lathe I couldn't push it on, but you know, by chamfering an edge on the brass, you get the sense that it's going to go on. So, and you've measured 2 thou, so it should be completely fine. And when I put this pressure on here, it should work. This is always a slightly nervous process. Don't know why. I'm just thinking this is a one-way shot. You get one chance at this. In it goes. That's really about as good as I could hope for. Very happy. So those are the two main gears. Now I've cut the same components, but this is for the pinion gears. I'm putting a 3mm hole in there for the grub screws. Okay, so now we've got our main driving cogs. We've got our smaller ones that are going to go on the motors. What we have to do now is take these and on that center hole line it up in the lathe and dig a hole that will enable this to fit. I'm going to take it right through to 1.5mm on the other side of this, and I will do the same on that hole for this one. And when we finish that, I'm going to bolt it all together again, screw it together, put it back in the lathe, and I'm going to extend this hole right the way through to make it 6mm, because that's the size of the hole that's currently in here. Although it's really 5.5 with a thread, I'll open that out. I'll be able to center that on there and then put the screws in here to hold this in place. So we're getting there slowly. It's just a logical process. So here's my first cut into the plastic, making sure I've got enough width there. This is using the far end of my measuring tool to measure depth. It's a very useful component. If you're not aware of it, that they're there, you can measure the depth of any slot. Now I'm using the bed actually of the lathe because I know how much further I need to go, and I can now open this out and finish the job off. As you can probably tell, using the lathe is a very, very nice thing to do. So they all fit. It's very nice. Okay, so what we've got here is the gearbox, and what we haven't done yet is worked out how to mount it onto this bulkhead, this Perspex bulkhead. In that bulkhead there is a 6mm threaded hole, which means I've drilled it about 5.5, and it takes this 6mm bolt, for example, and I did that in order to bolt this onto the chuck in the lathe to make it. So the obvious answer to this is this is 5.76. So I'm going to drill a hole right through here at 5.76 or a little bit bigger, which will take this nice and snugly. I'm going to put this in place, bolt it down in place, and then it's fixed. And then I can think about the holes that I'm going to need to actually bolt this on with. So the next thing I'll do these are 5mm stainless steel bolts. I think 4 of those, and they're going to be strategically placed as far out as I can. But instead of drilling this, the width of this is that's 4.84mm. I'm going to drill it thinner so that I can put a thread in, and that'll be around about 4.5. And I will put 4 4.5 holes right through. Then I'll tap threads into those. Then I will drill these out to the full 5mm so that it just drops onto there nicely and it's perfectly lined up. Now I'm putting these out fairly, I'm doing this with this one, and I'm going to put a washer under these bolts and then thread them up, screw them up, and they'll be the permanent housing bolts for this. And I'll put a decent sized washer on because I want this to share the love, you know, in terms of the pressure of the pulling and pushing of this piston up and down, which is going to be fairly significant. And I want to share that around. So that's how that's going to go. And then once I've got that in place, I can finish the work on these. That's it.